What's up, everyone? Welcome to Lowered Expectations. Thanks for lowering your expectations and hanging out with me here. I do appreciate it. In today's video, I'm going to be doing some modifications to my waste oil burner / waste oil water heater. If you haven't seen the previous videos, feel free to check them out here. After doing these modifications, you will see that they've failed. And hopefully you guys chime in the comments section and let me know your thoughts on why they failed and possibly what I can do to make this heater work better. After the failed experiments, we are going to do a little bit of fun testing, nothing terribly practical. I did receive a heat exchanger, a 16x16 water to air heat exchanger. So I'm going to pop that in the ice fishing shelter and we're going to give that a test. Stick around. After a bunch of testing with the water heater and deciding that I don't want to live in a sauna all the time, I figured it was a good idea to actually order a heat exchanger, so I did that last night. It should be here on Wednesday. Today is Monday. I went out today and spent $102 Canadian on a 18-inch piece of Schedule 40 6-inch pipe. It's got an inside diameter of about 6 inches. That's what this is here. And I'm going to use that as basically the guide tube, baffle tube, deflector. I also bought a piece of flat bar. It is 6-inch. That was $20 and change. And I'm going to use a piece of that to cap off the end of this pipe. And then I think what I'm actually going to do is use another piece of that to create a spacer. If you've seen this heater running, you know that a flame shoots directly out of the top of it. And the flame that shoots, if you've seen this heater running, you will know there's a flame that shoots directly out of the top of it. And that flame is going to be shooting directly at the bottom of this tube. And what I don't want happening, I don't want this tube to just heat up and then have a bunch of wasted hot air inside of the pipe just going out the flue or out the chimney, whatever you want to call it. I may or may not have just inserted a clip of me ranting on about capping off the end of this deflector or diverter, whatever we're going to call it. But I'm going to assume that you guys don't know anything about that because it was a long rant and I probably cut it out. I bought a piece of flat bar that I was going to use to cap off the end of this pipe, but now I've decided to use this, which is the offcut from the center where I cut out the exhaust outlet for the propane tank, or for the top of the water heater lid. And I've got this left over from that. This basically fits perfectly after a little bit of sanding, fits perfectly inside of the 6-inch pipe. And that is perfect because, well, I want the end of this capped off. However, what I don't want the flame coming up directly, heating this up, and then transferring heat energy directly out the chimney or directly out the flue. So, what I've decided to do, I'm actually going to weld this on, but then I'm going to use a second piece of propane tank, which I just cut out of the new baffle for the bottom of the tank. All that matters is I have this piece left over, and I have this piece left over. Otherwise, they would just be scrap. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this one to cap off the bottom of the pipe, and I'm going to use the bigger one as a heat shield. So basically what's going to happen, or the idea anyway, is that the flame that's coming up directly out of the top of the heater is going to hit this, and then instead of the heat just transferring directly out the chimney, it's actually going to come through in this air gap, and then some of it will bleed out and actually heat up the water by hitting the coil. Not sure if this is going to work, but this will actually act as a protector as well. That flame that is coming out of the top of the heater is probably going to oxidize things, so having a replaceable piece of metal on the bottom here is not a bad idea at all. Just in case I haven't made it clear, I'll make it not clear again. The diverter is going to hopefully guide the air out so that it goes up by the water heating coil instead of just out through the top of the heater and just heating the atmosphere. So it should make it a little bit more efficient. This should make it a little bit more efficient again and ensure that we don't have to grind out and re-weld in a new cap in the bottom of this pipe. Hopefully this makes sense now. As you guys can see, we've got the bottom of our pipe that now has a heat shield. As I was welding this piece on, it dawned on me that I can actually fill most of this tube full of some sort of insulation. Okay, I'm gonna try to walk through the heater assembly. I'm probably gonna get stuck somewhere in the middle trying to figure something out for myself or explain something to you guys clearly, but I'm gonna give it a go anyway. So, we've now got the original base. I have made a new baffle ring. This might eventually get welded in place, but I wanna test it. What is new about this is that it now has a hole that is the same diameter as the new flue pipe or baffle pipe deflector. We want this tube, which will eventually be welded to the top lid, we want this to sit up about here. This gap is going to allow the hot gases or the flames to actually come out of there and come around here without causing too much of a restriction. At least that's the idea. We've got our little spacer in there that is about 4 1/4 inches long. And now this piece, the deflector, is gonna go in there. This is gonna have some holes through the top of it here. And the idea is now the gases are gonna come out around the bottom like I just showed you guys. And instead of just going directly out the top, they're actually gonna have to go between the wall of this pipe and the coil. That's gonna put more heat into the coil. Very cool. That's kind of how this is gonna look. Let's see if we can get this on. Okay. Nice. So as you guys can now see, we can see the coils. The hot air can no longer come up through the center because it's capped off. The hot air actually has to exit through these 4 holes. And as it's doing so, it comes by the coils. I also just thought of something earlier. In order to close up this hole, I was trying to figure out I could make a sliding door or some sort of latch or a hinge thing. All I need to do is weld a tab onto this lower case that comes up here. It is now the next day and I've already done a test burn with the new baffle and it works great. But before I weld that in place, I've decided I'm actually going to do something to help this start up better, but more or less actually shut down cleaner. And what I'm going to do is actually use a piece of the flue tube or exhaust tube, and I'm going to weld it in around the bottom to create a little bit of a dam. I'm not going to go into great detail, but basically because cold air is coming in out of the air tube, the area around the bottom of the bowl never gets hot enough to burn the oil. So when it shuts down, basically it burns the oil level down to the point where it isn't hot enough to burn it anymore, and then it makes a tremendous amount of smoke. So I'm going to weld a ring in, and then I'm going to make it so that the oil stays on the outside of that ring, and that way I'm hoping that it shuts down. That ring should retain quite a bit of heat because it is 1/4 inch material. I could probably do this with something else, but I have a piece of this, so I'm going to use it. Well, folks, I broke my own rule with this heater, that rule being don't get fancy, just make it work. And the last two things I did to this heater to try to make it work better actually made it work worse. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's restricting flow too much. As soon as I drop it down in here more than about probably a foot, so 6 inches below this surface, it starts smothering the fire out. I'm going to modify the piece that I added in, and if that doesn't work better, I'm going to cut it out altogether. I have a couple of theories on what could be causing the diverter to make the flame go out. The first one is fairly obvious, and that is simply it's just choking it out. It's restricting flow too much. The gases just can't get out past the diverter quickly enough or efficiently enough without causing some sort of back pressure. The second thing, which I'm not going to fight with anybody in the comments about it, but I think it could have something to do with that diverter being made out of way too thick of a material and having a ability to absorb a huge amount of heat. And so I think it could be actually pulling enough heat out of the system. As I'm saying it to you guys, I'm thinking that it's very unlikely, but let me know what you think in the comments. All right, it is somewhere between -10 and -13 degrees Celsius. I'm going to try a fun experiment. I'm not sure if others would find it fun, but I've got a bucket out in the shelter that I built. It has about half an inch of ice over the top. I'm going to break enough ice so that I can get the pump down inside. We're going to get this heater onto we're going to get the heating coil on, and we're gonna pump the water through and just warm up some water on a minus 14 degree day, minus 13. Twice yesterday, it did a fun thing where the bottom of the heater coil section actually got stuck in the heater, and I was kicking it and pulling on it, and it was not fun. It was really hard to get off. This little test, if you can call it that, was supposed to be fun, and it was, but it ended a little bit early. I switched over to a time lapse, which turned out not to be very interesting, but what happened is the ice cold water going into the coil, surprise, surprise, caused condensation on the coil, and a bunch of water ended up dripping down into the oil, and that caused the burner to go out several times. By the time I got it sorted out, the water was warm enough, there was no ice, so it wasn't that interesting. Anyway, on to the next thing. This is my new heat exchanger. If you guys are interested in purchasing one of these, there's an affiliate link in the description below. Vevor sells these radiators. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a whole lot of them left, but depending on when you watch this video, maybe they're back in stock. I did buy this with my own money. Vevor did not send it to me. It didn't sound big when I was ordering it, but it looks big now that I see it in person. Try not to damage this, because they're not exactly cheap. It's packaged quite well. Yeah, so the heat exchanger itself is 16 that way as well. Now, I gotta go and get fittings so that I can actually pump hot water through this. Wow, these are capped off good. I priced these in a bunch of different places, and Vevor has a pretty amazing price on these, so if you're thinking of getting one, that's definitely one place to look. I'm gonna put this back in the box so that it doesn't get damaged, because that would suck. Alright. I just got back from Home Depot, and I'm hoping that I have fittings that will work for me. They always manage to stick these stickers right where you need to solder. It's not ideal. Alright, I'm going to scratch up the outside of this. Makes me feel better. Where's my acid brush? Alright, I got a little paste on there. The acid brush isn't working very well. The paste is a little cold. I'm going to take you guys outside and show you my setup in the shelter. I've got the heater out there with the water coil over the top of it. It's been running for a little while now, and the heat exchanger is inside of the ice fishing shelter, and it's been keeping that warm for quite some time. I am absolutely tickled pink about this. Yeah, extremely amused. Anyway, I'm going to replace the battery in the camera because it's about to die, and then we're going to go take a look at all of the stuff that I just mentioned. This is the heater you guys will be familiar with, and it's burning away. I've got these bars over the top. They seem to hold a little bit more heat in without choking it out too bad. I've got this container with about 30 liters of water in it, I believe. I doubt we're going to be able to see much, but I'm going to try to lift the lid. I've got the lid on there to stop evaporation and to keep a little bit of heat in. As you'll see, it's quite warm. We've got the pump. We've got the pump pumping water out of the bin. Goes into the bottom of the heating coil. Comes out the top of the heating coil and through this hose into the ice fishing tent. So now we're going to take a look in there. Oh, while we're out here, let's take a look at the temperature. Last time I checked, it was about minus 15 Celsius. Where are we? Minus 12. This is the setup inside. The diesel heater is turned off currently, and it has been turned off for several hours. The heat exchanger is just sitting against a box heater, and I do have a thermocouple on the inlet tube here, so the water comes in from the heating coil, goes to here, goes through the heat exchanger, goes out and back into the tote full of water. I'm going to turn this I'm going to turn the multimeter on, and we'll take a look at the temperature going in. Where are we here? All right, hopefully you guys can see that. We're at 62 degrees Celsius, 63, 145 Fahrenheit. Hopefully you guys can see this. That is 19.9 degrees Celsius. Over there we are 17, and directly in front of the fan we are 24. So that is quite impressive. I've been sitting here editing some video and watching some YouTube videos. It is currently 11:15 in the evening, and yeah, I'm probably going to shut this down anytime now. I'm going to start up the diesel heater in the meantime to keep it warm in here. But the neat thing about this is that the water that is in the bin will actually keep this warm for a while even after I shut it down. A lot of the testing that I did with this heat exchanger inside of the ice fishing tent wasn't actually testing. It was just me hanging out with my roommates and chatting about all sorts of stuff. So there's not actually any footage of most of the use that this heat exchanger got. We are going to be moving on to other things. I'm going to move the exchanger into my house in the next video. But I can tell you guys that the exchanger, if I get the inlet temperature up to 80 degrees Celsius, the tent was actually between 32 and 34 degrees Celsius. So this thing has the ability to crank out quite a bit of heat, and this wasn't the best demonstration of what it's actually capable of. That being said, ice fishing tent or shelter is not the best insulated thing, and so there's a huge amount of heat lost through the tent. So at minus 15, even to be able to keep it around 20 or 17 degrees Celsius is still a pretty good achievement. There you have it, folks. This is the end of the video. If you don't want to miss more of this nonsense, be sure to subscribe. I sure would appreciate it if you left a like on that video. All of that stuff helps. If you're interested in a heat exchanger, Vevor has them. I will leave affiliate links in the description below. They do have a few different sizes. I'm not sure where they're available or how many sizes are available currently because the stock was pretty limited. I will be releasing a video hopefully next week showing this heat exchanger being tested inside of my house, and you guys will see that, well, things are kind of getting a little bit out of control. That's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I've already said too much.